So, to introduce myself, my name's Matt Slane. If you're my mother and I've been naughty, you can call me Matthew. And I'm an engineer at Skyscanner, and I'm also one of the organisers of devopsdays Edinburgh. So if you fancy coming to Edinburgh and joining one of these conferences, please come along. So I'm going to talk a little bit about things aren't working. There we go. So I'm going to start with just an introduction to who Skyscanner is, a little bit about the history of Skyscanner, and then I'll talk about how things looked in 2014 when we decided to undergo our DevOps transformation. And I'll talk about the various different things that we did to try and fix the problems we had, and then talk about the various different things we learned and where we succeeded with our goal, which was to try and maintain the idea of a startup culture with a large organization. So in the early days of the internet, three friends, Barry Smith, Bonamy Grimes, and Gareth Williams, they liked to travel around Europe, visiting friends, family, and ski resorts. And this was also in the early days of the budget carriers, airline carriers, using the internet to reduce their costs and become competitive. And they got frustrated visiting all the various different websites, trying to find the best deal to get to their destination. So they automated the process with a spreadsheet. We're now a multi-billion-dollar company, so a spreadsheet as an MVP was actually very successful for us. I mean, how many people can really say that they originated from a spreadsheet? And people found out about this spreadsheet, and they asked if they could use it to help with their destinations. If you're not familiar with the Glaswegian accent, the bottom one is basically saying, please get me out of Glasgow, I want to escape, I don't care where we go, I just want to get out of Glasgow. Which, we're from Edinburgh, there's a lot of rivalry between Edinburgh and Glasgow. And that was, I believe, well, there's a rumor, may not be true, I may be making this up, the inspiration for one of our core features, which is the ability to search from our destination to anywhere to get to wherever you want to go, see how far your money will take you. So this was basically their inspiration for a company, the fact that people wanted to use their product. And in 2003, they actually finally formed the company. And now, these statistics are a little bit old. This is from 2016, but they're the only ones I'm allowed to use. We're over 800 employees, 50 nationalities, 11 different offices around the world, lots and lots of usage. Pay attention to the 50 nationalities. Being a Scottish company, we really had to start from day one looking at a global audience. And one of the best things about those 50 nationalities, working with them, is the amount of cultural diversity we have. It's a really fun place to work because of those people. But like a lot of companies in 2003, we built monoliths with our code. And the spreadsheet VBA turned into .NET on Windows. And we had 3, 4, maybe 5 services, but they're all very monolithic in nature. And if you was at the talk, at the workshop yesterday, with the human ops one, Hannah was talking about the human cost of releasing for monoliths. We had a 6-week release cycle and a release team that worked very, very hard on that release cycle. They worked hard getting ready for the release, they worked hard performing the release, and when they finally got the release out the door, they worked hard cleaning the mess that the release made up. And then they started all over again, and the cost was high. I can see a lot of people nodding their heads here. I think that's very familiar to them. And in terms of development, we were feature squads. So we'd write a feature, develop it, get it out the door. When the management were happy with it, we'd move on to another feature. And the code from that feature would just rot. And because we'd built a monolith, you changed one bit of the code, another bit changed elsewhere. So we had a huge amount of pain. And as we grew and grew, the pain grew faster than the organization did. But we did have some good stuff. We've got a great culture at Skyscanner. It was and still is a very, very fun place to work. We've got all the physical stuff. We've got great offices, we've got barista machines, we've got pool tables, games consoles, all that kind of stuff. But you know, that is just an attempt to get culture. Your culture has to be built into the company. So about a year before I joined, pretty much the whole company decided we wanted to encapsulate the values that made Skyscanner a great place to work. So we came up with some phrases to try and do that. And these phrases were designed to try and facilitate a company where the employees are respected by the management, and in return, they feel like they can own the product they build and that they can be proud of the work that they do. So we also had other things which aren't really evident in these cultural values. I mean, we had a blameless culture. We didn't shoot the messenger. If people screwed up, we realized we were human, and then we would learn how to stop those screw-ups from happening again rather than punishment. So we had a really, really bad engineering organization, but we had quite a good culture. But we also knew that we couldn't survive as a company if we didn't change. So in 2013, Sequoia invested in us. And this is about the time we realized we also needed to change. And Sequoia, because they invest in quite a lot of other large internet companies, opened a lot of doors for us. And these companies had also had the same issues as us. They also struggled with scaling. So we went to them and said, hey, how did you solve this problem? What did you do to scale your engineering efforts? Because we are very, very broken in this area. And when they came back, we realized that we had to stop to go faster. So the developers were told to put their tools down, no more development. And I think they even locked our CVN access. And a small group, the best engineers we had, were put on to what we called the Fourier Constraints team. And they were in charge with releasing daily instead of every 6 weeks. And sometimes they managed it, sometimes they didn't. And they just fixed all the bugs from all the broken code we had lying around to try and get a stable product that our customers could love again. The rest of us, we were told to read The Goal by Ellie Goldratt. If you've read Rolling Rocks Downhill by Clark Ching or The Phoenix Project, you will know about Fourier Constraints. And The Goal is the book that really brought this out. The Goal is set in a manufacturing environment where it's talking about electronics factory, building electronic equipment. And the other two books I've mentioned transform this into an IT setting. And since then, Fourier Constraints has become one of the core things that Skyscanner uses to solve problems. Fourier Constraints is basically a tool set to try and identify where your bottlenecks are, where your constraints are, and then give you some ideas on how to exploit those bottlenecks and exploit those constraints or remove them. The idea is that you should move your system at the speed of the slowest component. And this is the way you can get the best flow through. And as I said, that has become one of our core problem-solving techniques now. And as for our engineering organization, we decided to adopt the squads, tribes, and guilds model that's been made famous by Spotify. So I'll start with a squad, because a squad is the smallest unit of organization that you can have apart from an individual person. So a squad is a small team of engineers, usually 5 to 8 people. The idea is that they're big enough to be able to do the work that's required of them, but small enough to have a low level of team interaction and be able to move faster. So a squad is in charge of a specific piece of engineering. For example, a squad may be in charge of running your ads operation services or maybe your search engines or something like that. And to do this, they write a mission statement. And that statement basically guides the direction of a squad and says, hey, this is what you're going to do, this is where you're trying to go. And everything a squad does should be guided by that mission statement. If you're building something that isn't guided by that mission statement, you're probably building the wrong thing, or the squad has a wrong mission statement. One of the core things is that squads should be loosely coupled. A squad should not hold up another squad or be held up by another squad. So one of the things that we do is a self-service model. We no longer have a release engineering team. Instead, we have a deployment orchestration team, and they build all the tools that a squad can use to release code themselves. So a squad is now in charge of releasing their own product. So a squad basically runs the whole you build it, you run it, you ship it, you own it model. And it's important that squads are self-organizing. No one should really tell a squad what to do and how to build their product. And so squads are free to choose the working methods. The only requirement is that they're agile and they release product in small iterations. It's also important that squads have a diverse set of skills. You need the core competencies in your squad to be able to release your product. If you need a test engineer, you should have a test engineer in your squad. If you're building front ends, you should have a CSS and a JavaScript expert in your squad. Skyscanner believes in T-shaped people, and this is a really great way to cross-skill. A T-shaped person is someone who's got a wide breadth of knowledge across a lot of different skills, but that may be quite a shallow knowledge, just enough to get by. But in 1 or 2 areas, they've got a really, really deep knowledge. And so that forms a T-shape. We don't really believe in leaders in Skyscanner. We think everybody is a leader. So I'll probably use the wrong word with this title here. But we do have some leadership style roles and support roles. The first role I'll talk about is a product owner. The product owner sets the roadmap for the squad. He works with, or she works with the wider business, the customer, and maybe with other squads to try and decide what the squad should be building in the future. The product owner has no impact or say on how the squad builds a product. It's just, I need a product that does this, and that's about as far as the product owner's influence on the squad is, as long as they do keep check on to make sure the squad is working effectively and actually delivering the value that they should be. A squad has a squad lead, and the squad lead is analogous to a scrum master, but we don't use scrum because we do not expect squads to use scrum methods. So that's why we don't use the scrum master terminology. So the squad lead is responsible for making sure that a squad has everything that they need to operate. They also run things like management interference and making sure that people are not forcing the squad to do things they don't want to do. They organize all the various ceremonies that the squad runs and work with the wider organization in terms of technical excellence and engineering. And off to the side, we have agile coaches. The agile coaches are a consultancy area. They're a small group of people, and they are not actually members of the squads. They're a group of people you can go to for help with everything agile, anything lean, and anything theory constraints related. So if you have a problem where you think you're not achieving the velocity that you should do, you can go to the agile coaches and ask for help. So this sounds like squads have a huge amount of autonomy, and they do. But you need to get the alignment right. If you have too little alignment and too little autonomy, you have a micromanaged culture where the people doing the micromanagement are not aligning themselves, and you have absolute chaos. If you have a high alignment but a low autonomy, again, you have a micromanaged culture, but the people doing the micromanagement are all aligned with the business direction. And this generally makes engineers very, very unhappy because they do not have the ability to innovate. They do not feel they can master their product. They don't feel any sense of ownership or any sense of engagement. But on the opposite side of the autonomy scale, if you have lots of autonomy but low alignment, again, you have chaos. Squads are just doing what they want, and there's no general direction, there's no business alignment. But on the opposite side, if you have high autonomy and high alignment, you have squads working in a very autonomous manner, but they're also working to the business. So one thing we've learned is that you have to have an accountability and a responsibility to the wider business in order to have your autonomy. And this makes happy engineers, because engineers feel that they can own the product, they feel like they're able to express themselves, they feel like they can master their destiny, and they feel, like I said, a sense of ownership. This all needs trust. The business needs to trust the engineers, because at the end of the day, the engineers are now deciding how to do stuff, and the engineers need to trust that the business is going to allow them to behave in the way they want. Our CEO and founder, Gareth Williams, quite often says, why hire the best experts you can find in a business and then not listen to them? So the next level of organization is tribes. This here is a developer enablement tribe, which I'm a member of. I'm in the service and routing and discovery squad. And a tribe groups squads with a common purpose together. So for example, here, all of these squads build tools and systems to help other engineers go faster. Just like squads, a tribe has a mission level statement which dictates the way the tribe should be working. It tells the tribe what it should be doing. And again, just like a squad lead, the tribe lead is a product person. He thinks about the products the tribe should be building. He organizes lower level squads and say, hey, this is the general direction we should be going with the business. And make sure that the right products are getting built by the squads. And the tribe engineering lead thinks about the technical direction of the squad. He ensures, or she ensures, that the engineering excellence is being met, and that the common sort of costs and stuff like that are being met. And again, just like squads, they're self-organizing. And thirdly, we have guilds. Unlike squads and tribes, there's no requirement to be a member. Anyone can be a member of a guild or not be a member of any guilds. You can be a member of as many guilds as you like. Anyone can set one up, and they can disband at any time. And again, they're self-organizing. So a guild is basically a group of people coming together to discuss a common interest. So for example, if you're interested in Java, you can join the Java guild. If you're interested in testing, you join the testing guild. And this is a place which allows us to communicate best ideas and practices within a technical area. And it also facilitates the ability to find expertise. If you're in a squad and you're having problems with, say, testing, you can go to the testing guild and say, hey, come and help us out here. But this wasn't all plain sailing. We had to learn how to do this. Things were quite difficult at times, and we got lots of things wrong. So earlier, I was talking about autonomy and alignment, and one of the early things we got wrong was we had too much autonomy and too little alignment. We found that our OKR and our KPI processes were causing squads to optimize at the local level, which was causing problems at the global level. And the way we fixed this was basically we decided not to have OKRs and KPIs, but rather high-level company goals, which everyone was expected to work towards. But other things, we have squads with far too many responsibilities. I was a member of one of the first squads, which was called the Engineering Tooling Squad. And we had to build monitoring systems, we had to build service discovery, we had to build service routing, we had to do some infrastructure as code training. We had just far too many responsibilities, and we couldn't do that. So one of the things we did was we became the monitoring systems tool and handed off some of the other responsibilities to other squads. Another thing is squads placed in the wrong tribe. Again, monitoring systems were originally in the developer enablement tribe when they really should have been in the data tribe. And shortly after I left monitoring systems, they got moved to the data engineering tribe. And they suddenly found they had the support and the ability to do their job much more efficiently. And the tribe structure needs to be right. We're now on something like a third iteration of the tribe structure because we just keep getting it wrong. But that's okay because getting things wrong is how you learn. And like everything, you need to review it regularly. If you can't, everything you do is optimized to something that's already happened and is already diverging away from that optimization. And flexibility is important, especially around the squads. One thing we find useful is pop-up squads. And a pop-up squad is essentially where you take people from other squads, put them together to do a short-term project. And that project may be an investigation, which may not live, or it may actually turn into a full-time product, which you then maybe the pop-up squad can turn into a permanent squad, or you can find a squad who has the right remit to hand it over to. If squads no longer serve their purpose, you should disband them. It's not worth having them hang around, and not actually doing anything essential. And again, if you need a squad, just create one. Don't try and find a squad and give them a piece of work to do that doesn't really fit with their mission statement. Again, autonomy is a bad thing. Too much of it can be really bad. In the early days of this, we allowed any squad to develop using whatever programming language they liked. That had a huge problem because it limits squad mobility. We like people to move between squads when they feel it's time to move on. And if they have to learn a new product, as well as a new language, that can really hinder them in doing so. Also, creating the tooling is very difficult. We have our developer enablement tribe creates a lot of tooling for squads to operate with. And if we've got 50 different languages, we need to support 50 different versions of that tool. And that's just impossible, and it prevents velocity. It also causes friction with our internal open source model. And this is how we create collaboration between squads. If you want a squad to build something for you with their product and they don't want it on their roadmap, you can do it yourself and then submit a PR request. And of course, if they're using a language you're not familiar with, that becomes much, much harder. So we became very opinionated about languages, and now we're down to Node.js, something running on a JVM, and Python. So we have lost a bit of autonomy there, but we've got much greater business alignment, and it makes us run a lot faster. So the final thoughts. So what's changed in Skyscanner since we've done this? Well, collaboration's improved. Collaboration when I joined in 2013 was code reviews once you'd written the code. Because squads are now free to work the way they like, we're seeing a lot of pairing. In fact, I think pairing is now the default method for working. And a lot of squads are now messing about with mob programming. But the vision of what the business is doing is hard, probably harder than it would be without the squads model, because we're very aligned on what we're doing as a team, and it's very hard to sort of focus on other areas of the business. And that's something we're still very struggling with. I think maybe we should go and read Catherine's book here. That'll probably help us quite a lot, and if anyone else has got suggestions, please come and talk to me. We'd love to hear from it. And we've moved the whole company to operate on this model. It's not just engineering now. Our office management work in squads, our legal team work in squads, our HR people work in squads, and they all use agile practices, and they're loving it. A lot of them, especially the office management team, have said to me, why did no one tell us about agile before this? So it's great. We absolutely love this as a company. But one thing this has allowed us to do is scale very, very, very quickly. And I personally think that the company values I talked about earlier are starting to become lost. When they were written, there was less than 200 people in the company. Now we're coming up to 1,000. And a lot of those new people probably don't understand why those cultural values exist and why they were written. So maybe we should try to either bring them back or maybe write some new ones that, again, get the whole company involved in doing so. So did we succeed? I mean, our goal was to set out and try to retain the feel of a startup when we did this. When I joined Skyscanner, it still felt very much like a startup. There was between 200 and 250 people. And there was still a lot of camaraderie and a lot of battle-hardened sort of tales to hear from the early days of very few people trying to do a lot of things. And everyone also knew each other. We all called each other by our first names. Now, obviously, with 800 people, that's very, very difficult these days. So in some terms, I think we've succeeded. I mean, we don't have any of the bad stuff of a startup. We don't have any of the long hours. We don't have any of the sort of people firefighting all the time. People, we obey our daytime is precious value. People don't work very much overtime in Skyscanner. But we've got some of the good stuff. Squads allow a great deal of innovation, and that's what we really wanted to retain from the startup world. So yes, we do have some innovation, but I think in the long run, we're not really have got startup culture at scale because I don't think we can. I don't think it's possible, but I think we're about as close as you can get. So thank you for listening. We're hiring at Skyscanner, so if you're looking for a new job, and it's a brilliant place to work. Thank
you, Matthew. Good thing you mentioned that you're hiring, so if anyone's looking.
Yep. So any questions? I'm not going to throw that thing around, I'll probably kill someone.
Oh, I will. So, any questions? Is everyone too hot to ask questions? Or do you just want another book before you raise your hands? You want another one? All right. If there's no questions, then we're having a slightly longer break. You do have a question? Oh.
Yes. That wasn't the joke.
Oh. So, in this environment, when you can change squads and you have a lot of them, at least from my experience, it's very hard to get everyone informed about those changes, who's where, what tools you use, how you manage for people to know that these are the squads, you can find that person in that squad, and that other squad is responsible for that, and so on and so on. And not just about technology squads, also business squads, and so on. How you make it happen?
There's multiple level of tools. We use Jira, and each squad has its own Jira board, and they're all open to anyone to see. We also have Slack, and each squad will have a set of Slack channels, which they monitor for each one of their products, and maybe one for the squad itself. And also we use Skyspace, and the whole tribe and development structure is available on Skyspace. And we've got an internal tool we've built called Flight Deck, and you could look up a squad or a person or a tribe and see who's a member of that squad or who that person belongs to.
Are you going to open source it?
Probably, I don't know. No plans on it. It's quite unique to Skyscanner. It's got all of our office maps and stuff hard-coded into it. It was built as a little hack day product, so I can ask the people behind it if they're interested in it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So, who's next? More questions. In the back there. You get to throw it again.
What is your biggest frustration for now within Skyscanner?
Within Skyscanner, I think knowing what other squads are up to. The communication is very difficult. It's always been difficult when big companies I've worked in to find out what the rest of the business is doing, but I think in Skyscanner with this model, it's incredibly hard. It's not worth abandoning the model. I think the model is very successful. We really love it, but we do need to improve our communication.
There's a question here. That's going to be the last one, I think.
It's going to be
just to extend on that, I'm a fellow Skyscanner. About what you were saying about finding out what other people are doing, I found that it got quite difficult when Skyscanner took squads that were called things like monitoring services and allowed them to name themselves. And this ended up with a bunch of squads called things like Flying Panda and Hyperdrive and Megatron and just total guff. And that was done to try and allow people to not be individually tied to the products or the services they're working on, but it just made it really, really difficult from a cultural perspective.
Yeah, one thing we're doing to try and fix that is it used to be a case where your Slack channel would be named after your squad, but we're now trying to encourage squads to actually have a number of different Slack channels named after the products that they run. But it still can be quite difficult finding out which product you're actually interested in. You need to know the name of the product, and sometimes they have silly names too.
All right. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
So.